She knocked on the wrong door. Not wrong in the way of a mistake. Wrong in the way of a woman who has run out of right doors and has arrived, in the blue dark of a March evening, at the only one left. Hannah Vale stood on the porch of the Harden Ranch with her trunk at her feet and both hands pressed flat against the small of her back, because the baby had been sitting low for 3 days, and the 6-hour wagon ride had not improved matters. And she had a letter in her coat pocket from a man she had never met, confirming a position as a housekeeper. And she was 9 months pregnant, and she had not mentioned the pregnancy in her letter of application, because she had written the letter at 7 months, and had been hoping the situation would resolve itself before it became a conversation she had to have. It had not resolved. She knocked. If your heart is already in your throat, subscribe to this channel right now and drop the name of your city in the comments below. I want to know how far this story travels tonight. Every city, every name, it means everything. Stay with me, because what Cole Harden does in the next 10 seconds when that door opens is going to tell you everything about who he is. And what happens in Sable Ridge over the next 3 weeks is going to change the way you think about the word family and what it has always actually meant. Hannah Vale had come from Galveston, which was a long way from Sable Ridge in every sense that mattered. She had been a bookkeeper in Galveston for 4 years. Good work, steady, the kind that required precision and rewarded it, and that she had been genuinely good at in the way she was good at most things she turned her full attention to. She was a large woman, and she had always been a large woman, and in 4 years of Galveston she had reached a working arrangement with that fact. Some people saw it first, and some people saw her first, and she had learned with reasonable accuracy to tell the difference quickly. The man she had made the mistake of trusting had seen her first. That was the thing. That was what had made her believe him. He had looked at her the way very few men looked at her, which was as though she were interesting, which she was, and she had not been careful enough about the distinction between a man who finds a woman interesting and a man who finds a woman convenient. His name was Ward, and he was married, and she had not known that until the 4th month, and by the 5th month she had made her decision. Not about the baby, which was never in question, but about Ward in Galveston and what she was going to do next. She was not going to be the reason a marriage ended. She was not going to watch her child grow up carrying that. She had written letters to 3 positions and accepted the first reply, and the first reply had been from a widower in Sable Ridge, Texas, named Cole Harden, who needed a housekeeper and offered good terms, and who had not asked what she looked like, or what she weighed, or crucially, whether there was anyone coming with her. She had answered the question he had asked, and not volunteered the answer to the one he hadn't. She was not proud of this, exactly, but she was here. The door opened. Cole Harden was not what she had assembled from his letter, which had been efficient and plain, and which she had read, in retrospect, as belonging to an older man. He was perhaps 35, broad through the chest in the manner of a man who works rather than lifts, with a face that had been weathered into an arrangement that was not handsome in any conventional way, but was entirely trustworthy, which in her current situation was considerably more useful. He looked at her. His eyes went to her face, then to the unmistakable fact of her condition, then back to her face. The journey took perhaps 2 seconds. She met his gaze and did not explain herself and did not apologize. "Mr. Harden," she said. "I'm Hannah Vale. I wrote about the housekeeper position." A silence. Not a long one. Behind him she could hear the sounds of a house with a boy in it. Something dropped, something scraped across a floor. A voice saying something she couldn't catch. "Miss Vale," he said, and then, after one more second, "Come in out of the cold." He took her trunk himself. She did not argue. She had been lifting it herself for 6 hours, and she was done with it for the evening. She came into the house and stood in the front room while he set the trunk down. And she looked at what the room told her about the household and noted it the way she noted ledger entries, methodically, without judgment, in the order she would need to address things. The boy appeared in the doorway to the kitchen. He was 12, she would learn, and he had his father's stillness and none of his father's patience with the unexpected, which was understandable at 12, when the unexpected was standing in your front room in a condition that required explanation. He looked at Hannah the way 12-year-old boys look at things they don't know what to do with, directly and without the social machinery that adults use to hide their uncertainty. "Pa," Eli Hardin said. "This is Miss Vale," Cole said. "She'll be keeping the house." Eli looked at his father, then at Hannah, then at the obvious fact between them that nobody was addressing, then back at his father. "All right," Eli said in the tone of a boy who has decided to withhold his full verdict for a more appropriate moment. Cole showed her to the room off the kitchen, warm from the stove, a window facing east, a bed that was plain and good. He stood in the doorway and said the terms she already knew from the letter. $30 a month. Her own room. Sunday mornings free. He said them the same way he had said, "Come in out of the cold," which was as though they were simply facts about the world as it was, and not subject to renegotiation based on information he had just received. "I should tell you," she said. "You don't have to," he said. She looked at him. "The position didn't ask, no," he said. "It didn't." He looked at her for a moment, the same steady look he had given her at the door. "The position is the position. Can you start in the morning? I can start tonight," she said. He almost said something. Then he nodded once and left her to it. The kitchen confirmed what the front room had suggested, and the rest of the house confirmed what the kitchen said, which was that a man and a boy had been living without anyone whose job it was to see what needed doing, rather than waiting to be told it needed doing. The stove was operable, and the supplies were present, and the organization of everything was the organization of two people who had stopped expecting things to be in the same place twice. She found where the flour was by the expedient of opening every cabinet, which took 4 minutes. She found a cracked crock that had been put back instead of dealt with, and a skillet with a loose handle that was waiting to become an accident. She set the cracked crock in the waste bin and put the skillet aside to show Hardin in the morning. Then she built up the fire, because someone in this house had been letting it go too low at night, and the March cold was still serious enough to make that a problem. And she put biscuits on because the hour was late and she had not eaten since noon, and she suspected, from the state of the kitchen, that the Hardins ate late and inadequately. When she brought the biscuits to the table, Eli was there. He sat with his arms crossed in the manner of a boy who has decided that civility is possible, but warmth is not yet on the table as an option. She put the biscuits down and sat across from him and did not try to make him feel comfortable, because 12-year-olds could tell when they were being managed and it never worked. "You want butter," she said. "We don't have butter," he said. "There's a crock in the cold box behind the milk pail." A pause. Pa doesn't usually check behind the milk pail. I can see that. He looked at her. Something moved in his expression that she recognized as the beginning of a reassessment, though he was not going to let it show yet. "I'll get it," he said. He got the butter. He ate 4 biscuits. He did not say they were good, but he ate 4 of them, which was the same thing. Cole Hardin came in from the barn at the end of it and sat and ate 2 biscuits standing up, which was a habit she would address in due time, and looked at the table, the butter, the plate, the boy eating, and said nothing about any of it, but she felt him register it the way you feel a change in pressure before the weather turns. She had been at the ranch 9 days when the first serious contraction arrived. She had been expecting it, not with alarm. The baby was term. This was simply the appointed time, and she had been hoping, with the practical optimism that had gotten her this far, that it would arrive on a convenient day when she was not in the middle of making preserves from the last of the winter pears. It did not arrive on a convenient day. It arrived on a Tuesday morning when Cole was in the south field and Eli was at school, and she was alone in the kitchen with 6 jars half filled and the largest stock pot at a rolling boil. She finished the jars. This was not stubbornness. This was the understanding that hot preserves abandoned midway did not keep, and those pears had taken an hour to prepare, and she was not going to waste them. She finished the jars, sealed them, set them on the rack, and then stood at the kitchen counter and breathed through what came next, which was more serious than the first. She went to the door of the kitchen and called toward the south field. Her voice carried. Cole Hardin came at a pace that told her he had heard something in the quality of her call that she had not intended to put there. And he came through the kitchen door and looked at her, and he understood immediately, which was one of the things she would remember later about this man, that he did not require extensive explanation when the situation was plain. "How long?" he said. "Since this morning. You've been." He stopped. He looked at the sealed jars on the rack. He looked at her. "Eli's at school." "I know. Don't pull him out." She moved to the table and held the edge of it through what came through her. "I need the midwife. Mrs. Corbin, Agnes at the Mercantile will know where. I know where she is." He was already at the door. He stopped with his hand on the frame and turned back. "You'll be all right for the time it takes me to ride." It was not quite a question. She appreciated that. "Yes," she said. He rode. She managed the kitchen and the fire and the progression of the morning, and she did not permit herself to think about anything past the next interval, which was a discipline she had developed over the preceding 9 months and which had served her well. The midwife, Mrs. Corbin, arrived within the hour. A capable, unhurried woman of 60 who had delivered most of Sable Ridge, and who looked at Hannah's situation with the complete absence of judgment that belongs to people who have seen everything. Cole came back with her, and then stood in the kitchen not knowing what to do with himself, which was the most human she had seen him. "You can go," Hannah said. "I'm in good hands." "I'll stay," he said. "Mr. Hardin, I'll stay outside the door," he said, "in case Mrs. Corbin needs anything." Mrs. Corbin looked at him over her spectacles in a way that suggested she had not needed anything from a man in 40 years, but saw no reason to say so at this particular moment. He stayed outside the door. The labor was 14 hours, which Mrs. Corbin said was reasonable for a first child, and Hannah said was 14 hours, and they were both right. Cole stayed outside the door for all of it. She heard him once, talking to Eli in a low voice. Eli had come home from school to a situation he had not been prepared for, and Cole was explaining it, and she could not hear the words, but she heard the steadiness of his voice, and the silence where Eli's response should have been. And then she heard Eli's footsteps go to the far end of the porch and stay there. The baby arrived at 11 at night. A girl. 7 pounds and furious about the transition, which Mrs. Corbin said was a good sign. Hannah held her in the lamplight of the small bedroom and looked at her face, which was the face of someone who had just arrived from a long way away and was taking inventory of the place she'd landed, and Hannah understood exactly how she felt. Mrs. Corbin opened the door and told Cole Hardin he could come in. He came to the doorway and stopped. He looked at the child in Hannah's arms. He was a man who was careful with his expressions. She had learned this in 9 days, that his face was not a place where things moved freely, that he kept the interior work interior. But something moved now, quiet and unguarded, and she saw it. "Girl," Mrs. Corbin said. "Healthy. Mother did well." He nodded. He looked at Hannah. "You need anything?" "Sleep," she said. "All right." He did not move for another moment. Then, she looks well. She's very loud," Hannah said. "I think she'll do." Something almost happened at the corner of his mouth. He went and let them sleep. Sable Ridge arrived with its opinions on a Thursday. Not all at once. That was not how it worked. It came in increments, the way cold comes into a house through small gaps rather than the door. First, the women at the Mercantile who had heard from Mrs. Corbin. Then, the looks at the post office when Hannah came in 12 days after the birth with the baby on her arm. Then, the comment that Dora Hatch made at the dry goods counter that was pitched, as Dora Hatch's comments always were, to carry to wherever the relevant party was standing. Hannah was standing 4 feet away. She heard it. She did not stop walking. She finished her transaction, tucked the package under her free arm, adjusted the baby against her chest, and walked out of the dry goods store into the March-going April morning, and she felt every set of eyes in that store follow her out, and she kept walking, and the baby, who had been on the edge of fussing, settled against her shoulder as though the rhythm of the walking was exactly what was needed. Eli met her at the edge of the yard when she came back. He was there in the manner of a boy who has been waiting, but does not want to appear to have been waiting, engaged with a fence post that did not require his engagement. "You hear anything in town?" he said, not looking at her. "I heard what I expected to hear," she said. He was quiet for a moment. "Then, Mrs. Hatch doesn't know anything about anything." She looked at him. He was looking at the fence post with tremendous focus. "No," she said. "She doesn't." He took the package from under her arm without being asked and carried it to the porch. Cole was in the barn that evening when she heard him and Eli talking, the particular conversation of a father and son who have stopped their work and are speaking about something that is not the work. She was on the porch with the baby, who was awake and interested in the quality of the evening light, and the barn door was open and she could hear the voices but not the words, until a gap in the wind let through Eli's voice saying, "I don't care what they say in town. She belongs here." A pause. And then Cole's voice, low and without hesitation, "Yes. She does." She looked at the baby, who was looking at the evening light. "All right," she said to the baby, quietly. "All right." What forced it into the open was the letter from the county. It arrived on a Friday, formal, thin paper, the kind of official stationery that never carries good news, and Cole brought it from the post office and set it on the kitchen table without a word. She opened it. It was from the county clerk's office, and it concerned the matter of the child's birth registration, and it contained a question that the county required an answer to before the certificate could be filed, which was the question of the father's name. She set the letter down on the table. The law in Texas in 1887 was plain on the matter and unkind in its plainness. An unmarried woman's child required a father's name on the registration, and without it the certificate noted the child's status in language that she did not want on her daughter's permanent record. She had known this was coming. She had not known how to address it. She told Cole that evening. She put the letter on the table between them after supper, when Eli had gone upstairs, and she told him what it was and what it required, and she told him, plainly and without excusing herself, who the child's father was, and why she had not written to him, and why she was not going to. She said it the way she entered figures into a ledger, factually, in order, without sentiment. Because sentiment was not what was called for, and because she did not intend to spend the rest of her life being apologized for. He listened. He did not ask questions she had not already answered. When she finished, he looked at the letter for a long time. "Ward," he said. "Yes, married man. Yes, and you left." "I left," she said. "I wasn't going to be the thing that She stopped. The baby is not a mistake. The situation was a mistake. She is not. He looked at her. I know that, he said. It was simply stated, the way things were simply stated when they were simply true. Then he looked at the letter again. He turned it in his hands. There's a solution, he said. She waited. He looked up. Marry me, he said. Then her name goes on that certificate without a question on it. She sat very still. Mr. Hardin, Cole, you don't have to, I know I don't have to. He set the letter down. I'm not a man who does things he doesn't have to do. I've been watching you run this house for 3 weeks. I've watched you manage a kitchen and a boy who didn't want to be managed, and a birth on a Tuesday while you were in the middle of putting up preserves. He looked at the letter one more time and then looked at her. I know what I'm asking. I'm asking because I want to. She looked at him for a long moment. Eli, she said. Eli's already decided, he said. He just hasn't told you yet. She married him on a Saturday morning, in the kitchen, with Eli standing at the table still in his work clothes, because Cole had told him to come at 8, and he had arrived at 5 past, and the Reverend had been early. Mrs. Corbin held the baby. The baby was named Lucy, which was Hannah's mother's name, and her full name on the certificate, filed the following Monday, without questions and without qualification, was Lucy Hannah Hardin. It was Dora Hatch who precipitated what happened outside the post office. She came upon Cole and Hannah and the baby on a Wednesday morning, 6 days after the wedding, in the manner of a woman who has been conducting a sustained campaign through the medium of other people's conversations and has decided the time has come to conduct it directly. She said what she said, and it was not one thing but several, built in the architecture of concern, using the words respectable and proper and what people would think, and gesturing with her chin at the baby in a way that required no elaboration. Cole Hardin listened to all of it. Hannah stood beside him with the baby, and she kept her eyes level and her face composed, and she did not apologize, and she did not explain, because she was done explaining herself to people who had decided before she spoke, and because she had learned in the past month that this man beside her was a man who, when he finally spoke, said the thing that needed saying. He let Dora Hatch finish. There were 7 people within clear earshot, at the post office steps, at the rail, coming out of the Mercantile across the road. The April morning was sharp and carrying. Cole Hardin looked at Dora Hatch and he said, Her name is Lucy Hardin. That baby's mine. And my wife doesn't answer to this town for the way she lived before she came here. He looked at Dora Hatch for one more moment, in the way of a man who has said exactly what he intended to say and considers the subject closed. Then he looked at Hannah. You need anything else at the post office? No, Hannah said. Her voice was level. The baby was asleep. Then let's go home, he said. They walked to the wagon. 7 people watched them go, and not one of them said a word, and the morning went on around them the way mornings do. Indifferently, generously, without keeping score. Eli was at the fence line when they came up the road, and he saw them coming the way he always saw things coming, from a distance and in advance, and he came to the yard gate and held it open and looked at his father's face and then at Hannah's face, and read what was in both of them, because he was 12 years old and had been reading his father's face his whole life and had been learning. Hannah's for a month, and he said, Everything all right? Everything's all right, Cole said. Eli looked at the baby, who was still asleep. He had been looking at the baby in the careful sideways manner of a 12-year-old boy who is interested in something but does not wish to appear interested in something. He had been learning her schedule. He had been the one, 3 times now, to go to Hannah's room when the baby cried at a strange hour and say through the door that he was awake if she needed anything, which was the most generous thing a 12-year-old boy who was pretending not to care could offer. "She sleep the whole way," he said. "The whole way," Hannah said. He nodded, in the manner of a person receiving a satisfactory report. Then he held the gate for them and went back to the fence line. The summer came in hard and bright, the way Texas summers did, and the kitchen garden that Hannah had planted in April was beyond anything Cole had seen from that ground, which he said once, in the evening, standing at the garden fence, and which she accepted without false modesty because she had worked for it, and it had earned itself. Lucy grew the way good things grow in good conditions, steadily, with purpose, interested in everything. Eli taught her at 4 months that his finger was worth grabbing, and she agreed, and after that he was specific in a way that he would not have described as tenderness, but which was exactly that. Cole Hardin built Lucy a cradle in December. He built it from the same red oak he kept in the barn for good work, and he fitted it with runners and sanded it until the wood was warm to the touch, and he brought it into the house and set it by the kitchen stove where the heat was even, and he said nothing about it, because he was a man who said what needed to be said, and let what he built say the rest. Hannah ran her hand along the side of it. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's solid," he said. "She can use it for years." She looked at him. He was looking at the cradle, and his face was the face of a man who has made something for someone and is not going to say much about it, and she had come to understand that this was the fullest expression available to him, and that it was more than enough. Lucy Hardin grew up knowing exactly who she was, and exactly whose she was, because she was told both things plainly and often, and because the man who had claimed her at a post office in front of 7 witnesses on an April morning never gave her a single reason to doubt either one. She had her mother's precision and her father's steadiness, and Eli's early and unsentimental devotion, which he maintained throughout his life, while insisting to anyone who asked that he had simply been practical about it from the beginning. Hannah Vale Hardin ran the household accounts and expanded them, over 11 years, to include the books for 2 neighboring ranches, because word got out that her ledgers were exact and her rates were fair. She was a large woman, and she had always been a large woman, and she moved through Sable Ridge with the particular quality of a person who has stopped waiting for the room's permission, which is a different thing entirely from confidence, quieter than that, and more permanent. She had arrived at the wrong door at the right time, in the blue dark of a March evening, with a trunk at her feet and a baby 3 days from the world, and the door had opened, and she had not apologized for any of it, and she never had cause to.